The Christ-honoring, courageous, and sometimes even heartbreaking stories of missionaries inspire and encourage generations of believers. Their faith challenges us in modernity as we seek to fulfill the Great Commission. Hi, I'm Josh Walls, and today I'm honored to present just a glimpse into the life of Bill Wallace. For just a few minutes, we're going to examine how God used an ordinary medical missionary in extraordinary ways. The content for this presentation is sourced from this book, Bill Wallace of China, written by Jesse Fletcher. William Bill Wallace was born in Knoxville, Tennessee. He's the son of William Sr. and Elizabeth Wallace. Now, Fletcher doesn't tell us much about his parents. We learn that his father was a respected physician in the Knoxville area, and really the only information we find out about his mother is that she tragically died of influenza when Bill was only 11. He had one sister who later married and had children of her own. From a young age, Wallace he had appreciation for automobiles, and mechanic work just made sense to him. He actually anticipated a vocation as a mechanic and anticipated training as a mechanic. But at the age of 17, God had different plans for his life. And on July 5th, 1925, Bill sensed that God was calling him to medical missions. So in a course correction, he attended the University of Tennessee and later attended medical school in Memphis. Interesting story. In 1934, Wallace, while serving as a chief resident at Knoxville's General Hospital, sent a letter to the Southern Baptist Convention Foreign Mission Board, now the International Mission Board. Unbeknownst to Wallace, almost simultaneously, a man by the name of Dr. Robert Badeau, who was the administrator of Stout Memorial Hospital in Wuchao, China, also sent a letter to the Foreign Mission Board, letting them know of the tremendous need for surgeons at Stout Memorial. The letter was received by Dr. Charles Madry, the head of the Foreign Mission Board, who connected Bill Wallace and Robert Badeau. After a time of interview and walking through the process with the Foreign Mission Board, Wallace was officially appointed as a medical missionary to Wuchao, China on July 25th, 1935. Now, Wallace's engagement in China can be divided by 3 trips and 2 furloughs. So we're going to take a look at a little bit of this story here through the lens of what I believe are 3 characteristics that describe Wallace. First of all, he's compassionate. He was drawn to the people of China and the surroundings. He immersed himself in the culture there. As he was traveling to China, Fletcher captures these moments when his heart was welling up for the people and the surroundings. When he arrived there, he eventually, very quickly, attended language training in a nearby city. Language acquisition was a little bit difficult for Wallace, but we see his compassion here because he stuck with it in his desire to connect with the people. Fletcher records how Wallace would stay with patients at their bedside for hours as they were recovering from procedures. He celebrated over healing and he grieved over loss, and yet he was always pointing people to the gospel. There's a particular story as Wallace, in a very tragic situation, a patient, a young child, passed away, and Wallace picks up the young child's body, takes the child to the parents, grieves with them, but then gives them the hope that is found in Jesus Christ. In his compassion, Wallace performed countless procedures. We also describe Wallace as being someone of courage. During his time in China, there were some conflicts, some pretty substantial conflicts, the first of which was the Japanese invasion that took place during his first and second trip. Air raids did not move him. He kept operating. Ground assaults did not deter him. In a very fascinating move, Wallace had received warnings that the Japanese were approaching the city of Wuchao. And many people felt like Wallace needed to have the hospital closed down. But Wallace, so courageous, actually loaded up the hospital, patients, resources, staff, onto barges and temporarily moved Stout Memorial Hospital. We also see the commitment of Wallace. Early in his time of sensing God's call and during his time as chief resident, Wallace was presented with a unique opportunity to join a practice in Knoxville. A friend of his father's who was a physician approached Wallace and saw his giftedness as a surgeon. And yet Wallace turned the opportunity down because he was committed to God's calling in his life. He used the 2 furloughs as an opportunity to receive continuing education tailored to the needs of the people in China. He would notice a particular illness or a particular type of surgery that was needed, and he honed his skills during his furlough time. He met a lady who worked with the Foreign Mission Board. Now we don't learn her name, but Fletcher does record moments where there seemed to be a budding romance between the two, and yet his commitment caused him to never marry for her safety and because of his commitment to sharing the gospel. These characteristics often overlap. I believe the overlap was never more visible than during his third trip to China when the Communist Party was taking over the area. Wallace courageously remained at the hospital despite another round of warnings to evacuate as the Communist soldiers drew near. His compassion drove him to provide care to the sick Communist soldiers. Wallace drew the ire of the Communist Party whenever he stood against their claim that the hospital owed a large tax. They would not forget this. They would not ignore his popularity among the people. And in the early morning hours, Communist soldiers arrested Wallace. According to Fletcher, they charged Wallace with espionage, claimed that he was, quote, President Truman's chief spy. They planted evidence and began a propaganda campaign. Wallace was tortured. They attempted to brainwash. They wanted to break him. All the while, he preached the gospel from his cell. Late one night, soldiers came to his cell to force a confession from him. They took long poles and they ran through the cell bars, seeking to break him. Well, they did more than that. That night, Wallace became a martyr. The soldiers made the scene look like Wallace hanged himself. Fletcher records a quote here that I want to share with you that I think is powerful. Fletcher says, quote, "For that night the battle was over. And though no one heard Bill Wallace cry, 'It is finished,' he offered up his spirit and brought his ministry and mission to a close. Quietly his soul slipped from his torn body and his exhausted mind and went to be with the one he had so faithfully and unstintingly served. Bill Wallace was dead to the world, but was alive forever with God." Wallace was buried in China by the Communist Party. But in 1985, permission was granted to collect his remains. They were brought back to Knoxville, where he is now laid to rest. Brothers and sisters, we can learn so much from the life and legacy of Bill Wallace. His compassion, his courage, and his commitment are worth emulating as we seek to fulfill the Great Commission. There's so much more that can be said, so many stories that are captured in Fletcher's work. If you want to learn more about Bill Wallace, I highly recommend Fletcher's book. It's worth space in every Christian's library. Thank you for your time today, and God bless you, friends.